Chapter 379, The Gardener of the Withered Flowers, 1. So. Now then. Let's plant flowers in the world. Okay, let's get to work. After stroking the bell-shaped flowers of Constellation Killer, I stretched vigorously with a grunt. From now on, I'll need to move around quite diligently. In this world where nothing yet exists, where it's practically nothingness, blooming even a single flower will indeed require a lot. What do you plan to do? Bei Hurayong asked. Thinking about it, Bei Hurayong has been quiet lately. Even when he was nearly sealed by Constellation Killer, and even when he ultimately managed to counterattack and defeat Constellation Killer, Bei Hurayong didn't say anything. He just watched from a few steps away. If you ask me if I felt neglected, not really. I guessed why Bei Hurayong did not interfere. Even without any conversation, I could understand Bei Hurayong's feelings. Unlike when I was climbing the 10th floor, I am now strong. I have reached a state just half a step behind Bei Hurayong. This is where the teachings end. The rest is for you to solve on your own. If I had been defeated by Constellation Killer and captured by Eternal Seal, that would have been the end. My journey towards the top of the tower would have concluded there. Advice is unnecessary among equals who are rivals. That's true. I took off my coat and rolled up my sleeves. First, we need the sun. The sun? Yes. We need light, don't we? It's pretty dark here, right? Even if only withered flowers are expected to bloom here, it would still be too gloomy for the flowers. Bei Hurayong looked at me as if he was looking at a madman. How do you plan to create a sun? Just so you know, you can hang up something resembling a sun with aura, but even that would be difficult to maintain continuously. Well, I guess we'll manage somehow. We have plenty of time. And I feel like we could get it from an expert. 2. It can't be done, can't be done. Absolutely not. Unfortunately, after going down to Babylon and consulting with an expert, all I got back was a cat shaking its head vigorously right in front of my eyes. Is it too much? Woof. Even though we agreed to bark like this, shouldn't you at least have some conscience? Your budget for a sun is a bit, no, quite unreasonable. The cat that bit a gold coin looked at me like a real estate agent looking at someone asking if a brand new apartment rent could fit within a budget of 50 million won. It was so realistic that it hurt. Woof, I can provide you with a long-lasting light bulb.
Nah.
That's not cool. This is a garden after all. If it's not natural light, it won't do. What about a phoenix then? You could hang a cage from the ceiling and put a phoenix in it, that might create somewhat of a sun-like atmosphere. Is that really natural light? It's somewhat similar, isn't it? It all depends on how you think about it, and the world is always a series of reasonable compromises. I was momentarily tempted by the cat's words, but no matter how I thought about it, the image of a phoenix hanging above the garden and screaming sounded stupid. However, the world is a series of compromises, a phrase the cat uttered without much thought, inspired me. That's right. We don't necessarily need to bring the sun here to get light. Sunlight might actually be too dazzling for the withered flowers. Yes, that very self-justification is exactly what a constellation should possess. Now, Screaming Sky, if I may elaborate on the current market price of the phoenix, the price of fire attribute creatures has dropped a lot since Dachel went bankrupt. Thank you for the consultation.
Goodbye.
Meow. I bought work gloves, burlap bags, and various equipment and returned to the 81st floor. You look like you're going to dig up potatoes or something. Seeing me with work gloves on both hands and a burlap bag slung over my shoulder, the Wand of Ages looked at me with eyes that saw a crazy person. Huh? Did all people in the world, somewhere I don't know, agree to enact a new law about gazes, stating that they must look at me like that? I heard your talk about needing the sun and needing light. You're not planning to capture and pack the sun into a sack and bring it here, are you? Something like that. What? By the way, could I stop by Constellation Killer's sanctuary for a moment? The Wand of Ages blinked. What are you talking about? The sanctuary of Constellation Killer has already been destroyed. You saw it with your own eyes just yesterday. Yes. But the voice of the tower said the world would be destroyed, not vanished. The Tower Master I know, even if the constellations, apostles, and followers all disappear and the world is destroyed, she wouldn't completely erase that place. It might still be there, frozen just as it was destroyed. Somewhere. Please let me stop by there for just a moment. The Wand of Ages held his forehead. Screaming sky. You really are a strange person. What are you going to pick up from a place that's completely finished? Trash? Or maybe the corpse of a slaughter pupete? I'd understand if you asked for a legendary item, but what from a place that's left with nothing but trash?
Ha!
Wait a moment. The magician stared into the dark void. The Wand of Ages requests an entry ticket to the already ceased sanctuary. Approved. You may enter the sealed sanctuary of Constellation Killer. The magician nodded with a somewhat displeased expression. You've got the permission. The Tower Master must be curious about what you're doing. Gaining her favor isn't an easy task, but you do have some skills. Just live kindly, like me, only kindly. That's funny. If I lived like you, I'd have a rotten soul, not to mention no life left. What's wrong with my soul? A person who wants to turn their own sanctuary into a garden of withered flowers can't be sane. No, just imagine if someone planted flowers on their balcony, but they were all rotten flowers. Would that be normal? Is that so? Hearing it put that way, it does sound a bit strange. Maybe there's a reason why starting with Bei Hurayong, all started looking at me like I'm mad, but I didn't change my plans. Transfer. You have entered the sealed sanctuary of Constellation Killer. And so, I stepped back into the world I had destroyed yesterday. The scenery had not changed. The wind had stopped, and time had ceased. The sunset sky had vanished, and the red of the shattered glass sky was broken into countless pieces. In the void, the falling trash and shattered glass skies were frozen as if in a still frame. Here. I brought you here as you requested. This time, the Wand of Ages had followed me. He usually hesitated to show himself when I'm with other companions, but now that I was alone, it easily revealed its face. I have no choice but to ask again what you intend to take from here. The sky. The Wand of Ages furrowed its brow.
Ha!
The sky? Yes. I will take the sky with me. I began rummaging through the mountains of trash in the frozen world. What I was looking for was glass. Originally the sky imprinted with the sunset, now shattered into fragments, nothing but pieces of glass remained. Though the world was destroyed, the glasses still retained the red color they had been etched with at the very moment they were shattered. I picked them up, one piece at a time. Carefully. The two small glass shards were difficult to use. I found pieces at least as big as the upper half of a person. When slowly placed into the sack to prevent breaking, the glasses inside the dark sack emitted red and yellow light. You are being teleported to the 81st floor. I filled the sack with the sunset and returned to the 81st floor. Aside from the lily of the valley flower, there was still nothing here. I ascended the space filled only with darkness using void steps, as if stepping on stairs. Soon, I was able to reach the pitch-black ceiling. Good. I took the glass out of the sack. Then, using my fingernail, I made a small hole in the glass. The cut made by the aura was impeccably clean. I threaded a string through the hole, a string I had commissioned from the cat that bit a gold coin, instead of purchasing a phoenix, which the cat had assured would never break. Then I guess I can trust it. If I twist this and hang it from the ceiling, there. Swing dash. The glass, tied by the string, hung in today's darkness. It was like a candle lit in the middle of a basement without any lights, small yet clearly shining in red and yellow, illuminating the remnants of some sunset. It's still too weak as a light. But it should be okay, soon. I went back and forth between Constellation Killer's sanctuary and the 81st floor, gathering fragments of the sunset. The Wand of Ages watched me silently, though he had been grumbling just before, now strangely pursing its lips. You have entered the sealed sanctuary of Constellation Killer. You are being teleported to the 81st floor. You have entered the sealed sanctuary of Constellation Killer. You are being teleported to the 81st floor. You have. How much time had passed? The ceiling was adorned with strings hanging densely. At the end of each hanging string, the sunset swayed. Sometimes from glass pieces as big as a person, sometimes as small as a palm. But all of them were imbued with the sunset light of a world that had perished, quietly dripping exuding luster. Though the lengths of the strings were uneven and the sizes of the glass varied. From below, it looks just like a vine. I was satisfied. The 81st floor was no longer dark. But if you ask if it's bright, it wasn't bright either. The sunset that once set gloriously had lost its grandeur, now only fading. Faded sunset. And so, I liked it. Such light wouldn't be too much for the withered flowers, and they would willingly accept it. I see. The Wand of Ages looked up at the sunsets hanging in the sky. After surveying the sunset that lightly tinged the world of the 81st floor, he murmured. This is the light of the heavens and earth you are creating. And so there was light. Probably, no other constellation would gather such unimpressive light to decorate a sanctuary. My followers were the corpses of flowers that had lost their place to go, and my sun was the relic of a world that could no longer shine on anyone. Trash. Ruin. A place where flowers blossoms instead of life, a place that merely persists rather than truly exists. Yes. It's not too bad, right? The Wand of Ages did not answer. I wasn't really expecting one, so I just shrugged. I brought back a plastic bottle from Constellation Killer's sanctuary for the last time. In that place filled with crumpled trash, it was a relatively intact plastic bottle. It's been quite a while since I made one of these. I sat cross-legged and picked up a pair of scissors. Snip. The scissors crisply cut through the waist of the bottle. It was neatly divided in half. As I shaped it, I was lost in old memories. I used to make these quite often when I was in the orphanage. What I was making was a planter. A vessel to hold flowers. Planters, when you actually go to buy them, are more expensive than you'd think. That's why at the orphanage, we used to cut plastic bottles and make them into planters. They turn out quite pretty when you make them. Fill this with soil. I pondered a lot about the soil for the planter. But in the end, I went to the world where Kim Yul had lived, now a world where Kim Hwangtae is enduring all kinds of hardships while studying abroad, and chose the soil there. I went to the dump site where Kim Yul's house used to be, dug a hole, and brought back some dark, blackened soil. Phew. After compacting the soil in the planter, I carefully planted the lily of the valley flower. Fortunately, the flower was transferred to the planter without any harm. The red light flowing from the glass in the sky shone brightly, glistened over the transparent surface of the plastic planter. Okay. And just like that, I brought light into this world and planted my first flower. After placing the planter with the lily of the valley flower in the middle of my sanctuary, I turned around and looked at the Wand of Ages, while giving a bright smile to the still silent magician. This is how I will create the sky here, make waterways, and plant flowers, many more flowers. It might not be a sanctuary fun to watch. I think I will probably come to love it here. Shall we move on to the next one, Magician Nim? A sky has been created in your world. The 81st floor has been cleared. A land has been created in your world. The 82nd floor has been cleared. Now it's time to climb to the 83rd floor. Chapter 380, The Gardener of the Withered Flowers, 2. 3. The plastic pot filled with black soil was soaked in sunlight. The lily of the valley was quietly asleep with its roots soaked in it. As I looked at it for a while, the Wand of Ages spoke. Since you have created the sky and the earth, now it's time to create the sea. I see. Yes, the order of creation is. Wait. What kind of answer is that? You will know when you see it. The Wand of Ages furrowed its brows, but I started acting without further response. I first called Estelle. The sky that gathers screams summons its apostle. Your apostle responds to your call. The apostle of the sky that gathers screams manifests. A woman who was once called the Saint of the Week, and now serves as an advisor in my family, appeared. Her voice spread across the world even before her feet touched the ground. Family head. What did you call me for this time? Estelle's voice was excited. It seemed the thrill of a recent battle had not yet subsided. I raised one hand to calm her down and said, Calm down, advisor. I didn't call you to fight. Oh, is that so? I was disappointed that I couldn't contribute enough in the last fight. Haven't you become a bit of a warmonger lately? The role of Chamberlain is like an internet game. It tends to increase the aggression of those around you. I'm just one of those poor victims. Isn't that an insult to internet games? While there are mixed opinions on whether internet games increase violence, it's a repeatedly verifiable fact that Estelle increases violence. And while internet games relieve stress, the only thing Estelle can relieve is one's patience. It's good to have fighting spirit, but save it. There will always be time for battles, and it's not too late to draw your sword then. Yes, family head. So, why did you call me? Estelle blinked hesitantly. Only now did our surroundings seem to reflect in her violet eyes. Well, this place is the world I am creating. I continued. This will be where our family will settle. I see. So this is our Nazarick. What's Nazarick? A place mentioned in an old novel of the world that venomous snake recommended to me. That guy, is he planning to undermine our family from within? I see. So you're going to fortify this place. Very well. Let's appoint a gardener in each garden. The gardeners will possess formidable skills and items, and within the gardens they protect, they hold absolute power that can even surpass the family head. First, I need to talk with Liao Fan later. Estelle. I didn't call you to discuss such a security system. Then? Estelle. You can make it rain, right? Devil King of Fall Rain. The girl who was once called the Saint of the Week, now serves as my family's advisor, and who once submerged an entire world under a red flood, blinked her eyes. Rain, are you speaking of? Yes. I recalled Estelle's skill card that Bei Hu Ryong had once read to me. Plus. Hate flows like rain. Rank S. Effects, you don't look. You can't see. People consider what they can't see as not there. Blind fools. Right. Ignorant. Then, show them. Show them how many lives have been lost due to ignorance. As much as blood has been spilled in this world, the sky will pour down red rain. However, only the blood you have seen will become rain. Plus, let it rain over this garden. I requested. 4. The sight resembled a prayer. Estelle closed her eyes. She bowed her head. Her platinum hair flowed down like a waterfall, covering her neck and chest, gathering upon her clasped hands. Her lips parted.
Ah.
They closed briefly, then parted again.
Ah.
Again.
Ah.
It was a kind of rumination. When something unbelievable happened, when she saw something unbelievable, in order to somehow accept it into herself, to digest it, it was like retching several times. Therefore, every time her lips parted, the sound that emerged seemed to flow from deep within her heart, not her vocal cords. The sight I had seen countless times in her trauma. Dot. And so, the scene I first saw when entering the world of the Egyptian Empire unfolded. Red rain fell in my garden. It was a flood. The widely spread, fiercely falling rain soon covered the garden. Raindrops clung to each suspended sunset, scattering haphazardly. Strangely, a dark blue rainbow bloomed where the red rain and red fragments met. I quietly watched the droplets seeping into the plastic pot. It's intense. Yes. At the words of the Wand of Ages, I nodded. It's like a heavy shower. That rain was also initially perceived as a heavy shower. I quoted from a book I had read long ago. Rain that has fallen countless times. Rain that stops as fiercely as it starts. People thought it was just a rain that could be endured by chatting with neighbors with an umbrella or playing chess inside a house with a roof. Those were phrases quoted from several books. If each person were a book, then I had lived the life of a bibliophile. So even if I wasn't quite a librarian, I had many books to quote from. But it was not so. It wasn't like that at all. The Wand of Ages took a breath with a broken wand in its mouth. An appearance reminiscent of a smoker calming their mind by lighting up their favorite pipe. The actual effect was no different, the wizard spoke in a cold tone. It happens everywhere. Underestimating the grudge of the opponent. Not considering that the one you hurt might not be a cat but a tiger. Being negligent and caught off guard, getting your leash bitten or your guts rotting. It's something all empires experience and no strong entity can escape this path. Why are you laughing? Just. I picked up an empty plastic bottle, cut it in half, and continued speaking. Even beings as big as pillars have hardened lives lingering in their hearts. Are you saying I'm pretending to be tough? Are you not? My work must have been pretty messed up. The wizard, who had served as a judge in the underworld for an incalculable amount of time, once again put the wand to his mouth and then removed it. The rain falling now had a temperature different from the blood flowing in my body. It was so cold it felt like it could freeze, and thus the wizard's disgust manifested as white steam rising from his mouth. Yes. But whether I have any intentions or not, it's the right thing to say. The reason why the Egyptian Empire fell is because they were complacent, mistaking themselves for the strong. Yes. I nodded and then shook my head. No. The autumn rain pouring from the clouds covering the entire sky naturally soaked the entire land, accumulated. It didn't take long for the rising level of the rainwater to seep inside my shoes. The weight of each raindrop varied, and as the overflowing water from the plastic pot naturally created differences in strength. Initially flat, the ground began to rise smoothly until the differences in the force hitting the surface caused it to start undulating. It was the sea of this world. Additionally, because you forgot 2 facts. Standing with my feet dipped in the sea made of tears, I said. Someone is crying. Then, I continued. Someone is crying for someone else. I spoke to the Wand of Ages. Just as the Tower Master does. The Wand of Ages hesitated. Heat gathered in the broken wand. True to his nature as a great wizard, he quickly grasped the essence of my words. Are you saying that what the Tower Master does is a common occurrence everywhere? Isn't that why you were drawn to the Tower Master? Yes. Even in a world ruled by some merciless being, a world of despair, there will still be someone crying for someone else. It's something that must not be forgotten. The Ejim Empire was founded by Lafanta Ejim aka Constellation Killer. The founder of the empire had always been crying with his sword for others in a garbage dump where no one was ever invited. Someone was crying. Someone was crying for someone else. The fall of the Ejim Empire was simply because they forgot to maintain that. In the pot blooming with the empire's founder, tears of the Devil King who destroyed the empire overflowed. The overflowing autumn rain left dark red marks on the translucent sides of the pot as it mixed with the sea. Despite being newly formed, the sea did its duty as a sea. It silently accepted everything overflowing in the world. And it gave. I bent over and scooped up seawater into a newly made plastic pot, with my hands spread out. 100 Flowers Reincarnation. Activating skill. Inside the pot, which rippled like water drawn from a well, a small lotus blossomed. Like curtains in an old ruined mansion that no one had walked through, the frayed lotus had no weight. The heavy and light raindrops alternately struck, creating waves on which the tattered petals silently entrusted themselves. This flower. The Wand of Ages quickly recognized who the lotus was. I nodded and pointed to the pot containing the lily of the valley. If this world needs a sky and earth, it's solely because that child needs it. Likewise, if this world needs a sea, it's because this child needs it. I then placed the pot on the water surface, now risen to my ankles. It was the first boat to float on the sea of this world. The pot, like the lotus it contained, seemed weightless and trusting itself to the movement of the waves. It rose as high as the wave hills allowed before sliding down smoothly, repeating the process. It seemed dangerously close to capsizing, yet it gradually found a steady rhythm and began its own navigation. It drifted somewhere and eventually disappeared from sight. 5. A sea has been created in your world. Floor 83 is cleared. Thus, I continued to cultivate my sanctuary. 100 Flowers Reincarnation. Activating skill. 100 Flowers Reincarnation. Activating skill. First, I bloomed the flowers. I transplanted them one by one into the pots I had prepared. Then, I summoned my vassals and gave them tasks. Ugher. Daddy. Are you asking me to punch the ground? That's exactly it. I'll do it if you ask, but what's the point? This flower likes high places. I spoke while holding a tattered aster. My family's warrior leader stared for a while at the flower blooming in a pot made of dirt packed in white plastic, then snorted loudly. Got it. Daddy's job is always such complicated stuff. Ugher, step back. Thanks. Humph. Aberka swung his fist. Bang. The previously flat ground and the undulating sea above it exploded vertically. When the towering water column had once more doused this world in rainwater and then subsided, the floor of my sanctuary was no longer flat. A mountain range has appeared in your world. Floor 84 is cleared. That was how it went. Spring has come to your world. For a flower that enjoyed spring breezes and another that had collapsed from eternal winter, I brought spring. Summer has come to your world. For a flower that felt boiling heat as home and another that wished to visit the sea with its family even just once during summer, I created summer. Autumn has come to your world. For a certain flower. Winter has come to your world. Simply for a certain flower. Congratulations! Seasons have been created in your world. Floor 85 is cleared. In your world. Only for the needs of each individual flower, I filled my world. Bloom. I made flowers bloom. Rest sweetly, comfortably, and earnestly amidst the things you've longed for. I planted flowers. As long as you want, for as long as you wish. Perhaps forever. But when that time comes someday, when the day arrives that the withered petals heal, when the holes in the leaves fill themselves, and strength returns to the once broken stems, when the moment comes that they want to bloom brightly again, entirely of their own volition, only then will you leave the pot. That's how I tended to my garden. Chapter 381, The Gardener of Withered Flowers, 3. 6. A garden is different from a forest, and a flower garden is not the same as a field. Within the buds of withered flowers, no seeds grow, and there are no bees to transfer pollen, so all the flowers that exist in this flower garden were planted by my hands, one by one. Everything is completely in place now. The Wand of Ages sat cross-legged atop a hill, sucking on his staff. If this were building a house, you'd have cleared the land, erected the building, and completely applied the wallpaper and lining. Plus, you've finished installing built-in furniture, lighting, and even air conditioning. Do wizards also use air conditioning? In a world where magic exists, why wouldn't there be air conditioning? Why do you think wizards are so eccentric? It's all because they don't have air conditioning. So there must be a constellation that governs air conditioning. Want me to introduce you? I can't tell where the joke ends and where the truth begins. That's one thing that's truly wizard-like about him. So, when are you going to have the housewarming party? Housewarming party? Yes. Or a revival meeting? Which do you prefer? Once again, the wizard made such wizard-like remarks. For someone like me, who only knows about swords and martial arts, I could only stare at the wizard with eyes asking for an explanation. The Wand of Ages sighed and removed his staff from his lips. The constellations that have reached this stage are usually divided into two groups. It must be hard to survive. First, the constellations who show their sanctuaries to their loved ones and plan a happy future. Second, those who gather their followers and spout grandiose plans about the future. Even constellations are no different in their actions. The first is like a husband who bought a house, and the second is like a company president who built a headquarters building. The Wand of Ages silently stared at me. His gaze seemed to say, "You're a constellation too, and yet you're spouting such corny jokes." The Wand of Ages spoke with that look in his eyes. "You would be the former, I guess." "Do I look like that?" "Yes." "Wouldn't you call over your spouse and brag?" "This is our home, Raviel. A resting place for us to live together. This sea was created by the advisor, and this high mountain range is a trace of our sun wreaking havoc in the household, something like that." "Indeed." "Oh, why do you say that?" "You should know well that I can't be like that." "Oh, really? Why not?" "Well, then naturally, it would lead to something like, speaking of this flower, imagine. In a place that is not here, in a time that is not now, there was a group of boat people who fell into misery when the Ice Age came, something roughly like that." The Wand of Ages shrugged his shoulders with his staff in his mouth. Feigning ignorance. As expected, he brought it up knowing everything. I saw through his ploy but still flicked my wrist, shaking the head of Hishmith hanging there. I told this serpent once when I was shedding its skin. Humans are not dolls to be displayed in your glass garden. No one lives to be displayed by another, and no one has the right to display another. Surely, I who said such things cannot do the same. Hishmith cringed, making a squeaking sound. I drew back my wrist and concluded my words. I did not plant these children to be displayed to someone. The Wand of Ages removed his staff from his lips again. Even if that person is Raviel? Even if it's Raviel? No. Especially because it is Raviel. Certainly, I think it will be enjoyable. Holding Raviel's hand and explaining this world I created. Talking about what plans I had and the thoughts I pondered while making this place. I will explain to Raviel once again what kind of person I am, and that Raviel will acknowledge it once again. To be recognized deep within my heart that I am such a person would surely feel as sweet as my heart melting. Would she be amazed? Indeed, you are my wife. Would she empathize? I am truly happy to have a virtuous person as my companion. Would she join me? Yes, you wounded flowers. I too, along with Gongja, will take care of you. How happy would that be? That's why I won't do it. I will not invite Raviel to my sanctuary. It's something that shouldn't be done. Ever. The wizard sucked on his staff once more. Isn't that a bit too much? Screaming Sky, you even broke me, a pillar. Why not have a little more faith in yourself? It might not be as scary as you think. It's because I am scared. I continued speaking both firmly and honestly. Of course, I am strong. To be clear, there are only a handful of people stronger than me in the entire tower. But Raviel is my exception. No matter how much I resolve not to, how long can I last? If I invite Raviel here, if I walk this place with Raviel, I might unconsciously treat these planted flowers as rare exhibits. That is really, really scary. Isn't enduring such temptations close at hand precisely your duty? There's a saying that true faith manifests in the midst of trials. If it were something possible, it would indeed be a trial. To act that way in an impossible situation is foolish. The Wand of Ages clicked his tongue. I looked at him with a dumbfounded expression, which could be interpreted as, it's not working. Wizard. You really are a true wizard. Oh. Are you complimenting me out of the blue? Musha said that there should be no exceptions in a god's life. The Tower Master said that if you become a constellation, you must endure eternity, so think carefully before locking your skill set. I scratched the back of my head as I continued. Then this inference becomes possible. I'm still inexperienced, but perhaps there are more constellations who fall from grace not because they are overpowered, but because they fail to keep their word. And here you are, trying to set a trap of downfall with clever temptations. Truly, you are a true wizard. Yes, that is indeed a compliment. It wasn't even a particularly clever temptation. It was too blatant. What are you trying to do? I stared straight at the Wand of Ages. You said that if I give up climbing the tower or fail along the way, I would have to return the pillar position. Is that why? Do you want a comeback match that badly? The Wand of Ages also looked straight at me. What if I do? Then, wizard, having been a pillar yourself and yet unable to escape from your desires, you would be a petty person. And knowing that such a petty person was a pillar up to now, it says a lot about the other pillars and the level of the tower they support. But you wouldn't want that, would you? Why do you think that? Because you were a pillar of the tower. I said. Because you must have that much dignity. The Wand of Ages rubbed his staff on his sleeve and smiled slightly. In the end, it is a compliment. It's not bad to hear that from the person responsible for pushing me out of the pillar position. Why are you doing this? I wish for you to reach the 100th floor. The Wand of Ages said. I hope that the Sword Emperor's wish is fulfilled. I want you to formally become a pillar, and I want the other pillars not to stop it. Then why? Because for that to happen, you cannot be a fool who trips over a pebble. It was a statement loaded with implications. The Wand of Ages fluttered his sleeve as he continued speaking. Especially such an obvious pebble, no matter how much it shines like gold, you must avoid it. It seemed like I could almost hear the words, otherwise, you wouldn't be able to reach the 100th floor in the first place. I remained silent for a while. In this place where there were highs and lows of the land, the rippling of the waves, and the temperature difference of the air, the only things that were still were the flowers. I quietly listened to the sound of the blowing wind caressing the red water surface and soaking the flower petals with its scent. I asked, why do you wish for me to reach the 100th floor? There are 3 reasons for that. The Wand of Ages held the broken staff in his mouth on both ends, munching on it like a snapped pocky stick. The first is an easy reason. If the guy who defeated me doesn't even reach the 100th floor and loses, wouldn't that be somewhat embarrassing? Imagine how much gossip would spread among the pillars and constellations. Returning to work in such a situation, wouldn't it feel like being the outcast branch manager of a magic tower every day? I'm wondering if I should ask if there's gossip even between the pillars, or if there's something like ostracism even in the magic tower. It was you who said that constellations are all the same. What difference does it make whether it's a pillar or a wizard? The Wand of Ages removed one of the staffs from his lips. The wet, glistening tip of the staff pointed at the flowers I had planted. The second is for these children. Having you as a pillar would be better for these children. And thus, better for everyone. There was, again, always a wizard-like air in the actions of the Wand of Ages. Deception. Secrets. Unsaid words. Even in the casually thrown words, there was bone, or at least some fish bones embedded. However, the words just now were pure. They were like the flesh of a fish carefully deboned for a newly teething child, safe to swallow without chewing. And when I did not know what to say, I just blurted out the truth. You have made some effort, at least. Is that supposed to be a consolation? I'm getting the urge to brew a new pot of barley tea and pour it right into your nostrils. Right. And the third reason? For the Tower Master. Those words were also incredibly gentle. With a gentle face and soft voice, the wizard said, it was impossible for me. It would probably be impossible for the current pillars too. The same reason the princess had hinted at to me. The wizard kindly stated the reason he had been eyeing me from the beginning. Therefore, someone else has to do it. Whether it's you, the Sword Emperor, or someone else entirely. Someone who is not a pillar. But preferably, you. The wizard's lips closed and then opened. I hope you make it easier for the Tower Master, he wished. The voice of the Wand of Ages landed lightly, like a leaf, in the garden of these withered flowers. 7. We had a housewarming party. I called my vassals. I did not call Raviel. There's nothing more to say about the latter. The conversation I had with the Wand of Ages says it all. This garden is a place where the flowers are the masters, a flower garden that does not receive visitors. In the future, we may be able to accept morning visitors. I said. Among these children, there might be those who have families or loved ones. If these children wish to reunite with them, then I must allow it. Indeed. So they are morning visitors. Estelle, who had raised the water level of the sea by crying once more, wiped her eyes with a handkerchief handed by Sylvia and continued. It's kind of like a communal cemetery. No. A rehabilitation hospital might be more fitting. It's more correct to call them visiting guests rather than mourning guests.
Ah.
Certainly. But for a rehabilitation hospital to accept visitors, it needs doctors, nurses, and public service workers. Estelle continued while blowing her nose into Sylvia's handkerchief. I will naturally take on the role of the head nurse. That is, the gardener, here. As I mentioned earlier, gardeners exhibit absolute strength surpassing the head of the family in the flower garden they protect. Sylvia. Just so you know, she's blaming you for how she ended up like this. No way. Using only her thumb and index finger, Sylvia received the handkerchief and made a truly disgusted expression. No, 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 no. That's absolutely nonsense. The advisor has always been. Something was a bit strange about her. Grand Chamberlain. Do you want to get hit? This is exactly what I mean. Resorting to violence. Advisor, as someone called an advisor, do you only know physical solutions to political problems? All wars are originally a continuation of political solutions. And everything that happens in this world is physical. So, do you understand what I mean? That you're asking to get hit. Mass and velocity are consistent. It's just the direction that's been misguided. For a moment, Sylvia swung a hammer and Estelle swung a great sword, each aiming for the other's head. Aberka's voice came through as he munched on salt vanilla popcorn as white as his own skin. Ugher. Daddy, do I not need to stop them? Son, before asking me, shouldn't you be thinking about acting like an adult without being told? Father, what do you think I've been doing all this time while you were away? Ugher. Now it's time for Father to experience the hardships I've endured while our house was unattended. The housewarming hasn't even started, and my family is already falling apart. I sighed deeply.
Ah.
I just sighed and didn't actually stop Sylvia and Estelle. Kids are supposed to grow up fighting each other. After letting them be, I looked around at the other people present. Director. Kim Yul-SSI. I said. Would you take care of managing this flower garden? Chapter 382, The Gardener of Withered Flowers, 4. 8. Please take charge of managing this garden. The first to react to my words were neither the director nor Kim Yul-SSI. It was Estelle, who had just dodged Sylvia's hammer, who exclaimed in surprise. Family head Nim, that's impossible. I looked at Estelle. My family's advisor immediately offered advice. First, there are prior tasks assigned to family's shadow. Didn't the corner librarian want family's shadow to not seek other employment? Moreover, family's shadow has been absent frequently lately, causing dissatisfaction for the corner librarian. Completely relocating family's shadow's residence might send the wrong signal to the corner librarian. Sylvia was surprised at these words. What is this? Why are you talking like an advisor? Because I am an advisor. You are the Grand Chamberlain, so you handle cleaning, cooking, and tea making. If cleaning the family is the Grand Chamberlain's job, then cleaning you up should be the first thing I should do. The first thing you should do is to purify yourself. Shall I swallow you up? Before they could start measuring their killing intent against each other again, I quickly spoke. The advisor's words are worth considering. Someone I know well once said that when a constellation harbors poison, all sorts of bizarre things happen. Behurayum crossed his arms behind me and snorted through his nose. Estelle, unable to see him, propped her chin and sighed. Yes, strictly speaking, the corner librarian is no longer a constellation, but he's still one of those who needs caution and care. It's not just about preventing risks, but he's also someone I need to take responsibility for. You're right. I nodded. Let's deal with that next. What's the next issue? For family clan's shadow, maybe not, but for your elder, it might be too much of a burden. Her tone was cautious. The director agreed with this as well. Can I do it? With a voice laden with suppressed emotion, the director spoke. Gongja. I am weak. I can't use martial arts techniques, whether it's aura or chi, and I can't use magic either. The only knife I know how to handle is a kitchen knife. Actually, even that, you didn't handle very well. I said. The director smiled slightly, then continued with a lighter voice. Right. Blades have always been difficult for me to handle. The flat side of a spoon is about the limit I can handle without burden. The rice you mixed and the apples you sliced were delicious. Thank you, but the skills needed to protect your house aren't those, are they? The director's voice sank again. It was not difficult to recognize that this pressing stone was a feeling of powerlessness. The director has witnessed how violence works. The first flower planted in this world a friend who couldn't be protected by him. Also, as the master of this world, I was once a child who needed to be protected by the director. There were many enemies targeting me. Not to mention constellations or pillars, even without counting hunters from other worlds, a significant number of media on the first floor of the tower were joining hands to strike at me down. As I once discussed with Anastasia, it is a necessary thing. If there is one thing I agree with the Tower Master about, it is that there are many people in the world who need someone to point fingers at. The Tower Master has become such a target, willingly and out of necessity. However, the pillars and the constellations would find it painful to see such a Tower Master. A similar thing must be happening to the director as well. Even if you have the mindset to live up to your responsibilities, can a parent's heart be so straightforward when they must read critical articles about you every morning? I decided to start with what needed to be said first. Director. I'm fine. The director's expression relaxed slightly. I continued. And it's okay that you can't wield a sword. What I expect from you isn't violence. Quite the opposite. I hope that the director always keeps a distance from it. I will ensure that you never need to wield a sword. I put my words into action. I looked at Kim Yul first. Kim Yul SSI. Kim Yul was also looking at me. Ever since he had cut himself, the world reflected in his eyes had become clearer. I spoke towards the world reflected in his eyes. Can you protect the director, and this garden? I'll do my best. Kim Yul immediately responded. Looking down at the lily of the valley he had been, and towards the friend standing beyond that lily of the valley, Kim Yul declared. I will protect what needs to be protected. Yes. I accepted his words, and drew the holy sword. Shiny. The holy sword of the goddess, which I had held and never let go since acquiring it in the Ejim Empire, I planted right in the middle of the garden. Light burst forth. The goddess of protection manifests. The goddess of protection, Shiny, revealed herself. Wings made of light unfolded. Like rusted sunsets wrapped by the wind, they tinged the entire garden a crimson hue. Shiny. The flowers were withered, but they were still flowers. Though red light dominated, the world originally full of flowers lacked no color from beginning to end. However, the brightness was poor. All the petals were faded, washed out, or thinly floating. Light filled such places. Petals coated in a white radiance became distinct one by one. The flowers existed in this world, not by sparkling but by flickering. Yes, Hieronym. I would like to entrust you with managing this garden as well. It would be good if you could help Kim Yul SSI. Pointing to the figure she had once summoned and wielded, I continued. Would that be all right? The goddess of protection, Shiny, looked at her former partner who had once torn her into 5 seals. As when Lafanta Ejim was first mentioned, there was no resentment in her gaze. Yes. But there was worry and concern. That gaze, carrying both emotions, swept over Kim Yul and then turned towards me. Will you be all right? I smiled bitterly. It will be regrettable. Yes, you will need to find a new sword. The sword you have in mind. I have one. But it's not just about the sword. I bowed my head. Thank you for being with me all this time. Shiny smiled. Her smile was bright and light. Such grand words. It's not as if we're parting forever. Well, that's true, but then it's okay. I am, after all, a protector. The goddess of protection truly, fittingly spread her wings and said, I will be protecting your home. Shiny then slowly turned towards Kim Yul. The light from her gradually closing wings was no longer casting a wide spread across the world but was now solely focused on Kim Yul. I ask anew, please take care of me. Former hero. Like a rookie actor suddenly spotlighted for the first time, Kim Yul faltered. A complex expression rippled across his face before settling. It's rather I who should say that. Just as the director and Kim Yul and Shiny were bound to have a long conversation. Shiny and the director would also likely have much to discuss. However, that was something that could be done at another time, not just in this moment. I turned to Estelle. Advisor. I want to entrust you with the security of this place too. Estelle, who had been looking at the manifested Shiny and Kim Yul with a complex expression, hesitated and then looked at me. Me? Why? Didn't you want to be a gardener? If it's in a garden you're protecting, you could be stronger than. I've thought about it again, and it seems like it was quite an embarrassing idea. Thus, the world's light novel readership decreased by 1. Like a Pomeranian shaking off water from its fur, Estelle shook her head to rid herself of any lingering traces of being a venomous snake. I am, in many ways, not quite right for these two. That's exactly why. I suppose that makes sense from your perspective, family head Nim. But please consider my position too. The former Devil King, who had once been an enemy of the empire established by Lafanta Ejim and destroyed the world protected by the goddess of protection, was desperate. Not even a cat refusing to get into a bathtub would squirm more than this. Please. Estelle hesitated. She sighed. She shrugged her shoulders. Eventually, she let her arms hang down. If you would order me instead, it might be easier for me to accept. Please. Understood. Yes. Gardener. Upon thinking it over again, it doesn't seem so embarrassing after all. I have a village I used to look after, so I will need to take plenty of vacations, but, there needs to be an advisor at the family's main residence anyway. Well, anyway. Estelle took a deep breath. She then bowed her head towards Shiny and Kim Yul. Please take good care of me. Welcome. Shiny flapped her wings as she greeted her warmly. Truly, she is a sparkling goddess. The reason Lafanta Ejim didn't kill Shiny when he began walking the path of Constellation Killer was surely not just because of old gratitude. Perhaps that's why. Kim Yul also nodded once to welcome Estelle. Their welcome seemed to make Estelle even more awkward, writhing like a snake placed on a snowfield. She had found her prey. Come join us. Sylvia, who had been looking at Estelle with a villainous-like smile, was taken aback. Eek. Me too? This place where it feels like my SAN points will be chipped away in real time proportional to my stay? Then where else should the Grand Chamberlain be if not guarding the family's mansion? I have a significant duty to prepare tea for the Lady of the Silver Lily. Shall I ask for your opinion? Brewing tea for her. Cleaning this garden. Which do you think the Lady of the Silver Lily would prefer more? To put it simply, which feels more like you're being screwed over? Damn it. Sylvia sighed. Estelle raised her greatsword to her shoulder and lifted her chin proudly. Still, you were named after a flower, weren't you? Then wouldn't it be fitting for you to be in a garden? Sylvia grunted. Then she muttered through gritted teeth. That's an old story. Even more fitting since it's withered now. Come. Damn it. Sylvia finally surrendered. Shuffling her feet, she stood beside Estelle and truly looked like one of the flowers that had sprung up in this world. Okay. Only then did I turn back to the director. As you can see, others will be taking up the swords. Everyone here needs help. It wasn't just the flowers I was referring to. Apart from Shiny, Kim Yul, Estelle, Sylvia, and all the people from the Death King family who would come here, everyone needed help. Shadows deepen as much as the depth of the wounds, and only those who are hurt by the world can deeply engrave the doctrine of shadows within themselves. I hope you can help, I said, as the young master of infernal heavens. That is something the director can do well. The director's silence was brief. His answer, too, was not lengthy, resembling his friend. I'll do my best. With that, everything was in place. Delegates are being assigned to your world. Quietly, the verdict rang out. The 89th floor is cleared. This place is where rusted sunsets drape over the Red Sea. Where the petals, tired of luring bees, and the leaves, never having such talents in the first place, fall asleep drooping their leaves. The land guarded by the goddess of protection and the devil king of fall rain. The garden cultivated by my mentor and his friend. The resting place where my family will reside. From now on, the garden of withered flowers is the sanctuary of the sky that gathers screams. May luck be with you all. And thus, the path to the 90th floor was laid out in my world. 9. As always, there is an epilogue to this story. No, 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 no. Isn't this too much? The corner librarian flapped his sleeves like a butterfly flapping its wings. I strongly oppose. Absolutely oppose. If Kim Yul leaves, who will look after the books? I must go too. I will definitely go. My goodness. The librarian is flapping about. Move. This time I'm going to be at the front. Beside the frantic corner librarian were the stalkers, including the assistant writer from the 50th floor, creating a ruckus. What a mess. As if trying to add another Shiba Inu to the chaos, the manager of Cafe Planetarium, the Medicine King, yelled. If you're going to make a scene, go outside. There's a limit to disturbing the business. I'm sorry. You see, this is why young people these days just can't. Oh my. How similar they are to me when I was young. But I've said it multiple times. There's not a single person here younger than you. Maybe it's time you updated that information in your head? Thus, the stalkers of the librarian started growling at the Medicine King. This too was a daily occurrence here. The corner librarian pushed through the stalkers and looked at me with a sorrowful gaze. Look at this. Look at this miserable state. Do you see what you've done to me? Strictly speaking, it's something you brought upon yourself. Hamustra was one of the few who could hear my informal speech. It seemed unlikely that he would enjoy being treated similarly to
Yo! So, ha!
by me, but Hamustra seemed a bit relieved as he averted his gaze and grumbled. Well, that's true. But even so, taking Kim Yul away is going too far. Don't worry. I stirred Hamustra's frappuccino and handed it to him. Strictly speaking, you don't want to employ Kim Yul as a librarian. You just want to be with him. Well, that's true, but... Aha, indeed. Even I as one of the gardeners in that garden. No, that's not happening. I wouldn't even let Raviel in for fear the flowers would be reduced to mere exhibits. There's no way I'd let this voyeuristic patient into my sanctuary. So, I'm planning to link a path to my sanctuary in this library too. I briefly conveyed the framework I had in mind. As a seasoned constellation who had played around with the levels in the tower, the corner librarian immediately understood. So, you mean to turn this place into a sort of staff cafeteria? More precisely, a lounge. In essence, it was similar to fitting out a building. In that construction, my sanctuary would become a garden arranged on the rooftop. Floors like the 20th, originally where I resided, and the 22nd, where Estelle's paradise and my mentor's grave were located, would become the floors leading up to that rooftop. A tower within the tower. Thus, this planetarium, where the corner librarian resides, would function as a lounge where gardeners and visitors can rest their minds and bodies. Well, if that's the case, I'll get to see his face at least once a day.
Yeah.
Not bad, right? If I said I had no complaints, I'd be lying, but I understand. The corner librarian, glancing at the fox wrapped around my neck with a somewhat jealous eye, sighed. While silently sucking on the frappuccino through a straw, Hamustra, who had been quiet, suddenly asked with that kind of feeling. Why exactly are you climbing the tower? It was a sudden question. To be honest, it's something I've been wondering about since I heard you reached the 80th floor. Kim Gongja. You have proven everything you needed to prove. As a complete constellation, you have corrected nearly all the injustices in your tower to your liking. The corner librarian leaned his chin on his palms and stared at me thoughtfully. Do you know what a constellation in such a position usually does? They don't take on more challenges? Exactly. From this point, they focus solely on gathering followers safely, increasing their divine power, and collecting items. If they see another world that looks easy to conquer, they might launch a raid. The corner librarian stirred his frappuccino with a straw. Then, when they feel there's no more content to run around or they no longer want to live in a rented room, they set out to get their own place. That happens as they move from the 81st to the 90th floor and create their sanctuaries. Indeed. That's it. The difference between a 5-star constellation and a regular one is just that. Just that. But having one's own home isn't the only way to live, right? The sounds of the corner librarian's followers and the medicine king arguing continued. Hamustra glanced at them, then looked back at me. Even if you were to spend about 20 million years wearing a tracksuit, dipping French fries in a shake, and licking your fingers clean, no one would have said anything. Yet, you choose to challenge yourself. I hear because of that, you nearly died, or rather, faced something worse than death. Was it worth the risk? Perhaps it was a natural question. The corner librarian peered deeply into my eyes and asked. To become a pillar? Where did you hear that from? There are still many ties left, so I hear about world's affairs roughly. It's a bothersome thing, but anyway, is that why? Or... The implication of doing it for the Tower Master was something the corner librarian also kept to himself. I said. From your perspective, wouldn't not climbing the tower be unlike me? From the perspective of someone selling a character, it's good for you to climb the tower. But fandom and reality are different. After speaking calmly, the corner librarian went,
Ah.
and then placed both hands on his cheeks. Of course, if you hear said, I decided to climb the tower, just to please you, my fan. I would be so thrilled I'd faint. I made a promise to someone. The corner librarian hesitated. I spoke towards him. To climb the tower. Since you've read my book carefully, you should know with whom I made that promise. I got up from my seat. The corner librarian stared at me blankly, then suddenly his eyes widened. His gaze was directed towards a man who could never be seen by him but who undoubtedly existed by my side. Indeed. Murmuring as if sighing, Hamustra repeated. Indeed, so that's how it was. That's right. Well then. I turned around. The belt from which Shiny was absent felt empty with only a dagger tied to it, the one I had from the beginning, and it felt all the more unburdened. Shall we go? Yes. The man who had taught me how to wield a sword since the time I only had that blue-taped wrapped dagger answered my words. Let's go. The next step would be on the 90th floor. Only 10 floors to the very top. And 9 floors remained to the floor where the Sword Emperor had failed. Chapter 383, The 9 Keys, 1. Snip. As if on cue, the hairdressing scissors crossed through the air. So. You really intend to climb straight to the 100th floor? Yes. I said, reflected in the large glass window. Behind me, the director holding the scissors sighed. It would be better to rest a bit more before going up. You're saying the same thing as Hamustra. No, is it that Hamustra is saying the same thing as you, director? Either way, it's a valid point. When you spend a lot of time together, you naturally influence each other. Hamustra, Kim Yul, and the director had spent time together in the planetarium. Time was such that it influenced both parties. Even for someone as significant as Hamustra, this was no exception. Bei Hurayong and I were no different. Yes, I'll be going up right away. While I was getting my hair cut, Bei Hurayong quietly waited by my side. All right. The director then focused more on cutting without further words. Snip. You really have become a director now. The director frowned. If you're going to add, since you've become the manager of the garden, that makes you the director, then please stop. I don't want to find out that the child I looked after has become a man in such a manner. I wanted to help prevent global warming. This isn't Earth. As the conversation went on, the director continued to trim my hair, while saying, 150 years ago, a journalist asked a mountaineer a question. Why do you want to climb Mount Everest? It's not hard to guess why the journalist asked that question. It was for a similar reason to why reporters rushed to ask when Mr. Callenberry declared he would enter the tower a few years ago. Why would someone who can live comfortably risk stability? Did you receive any promises as a reward for climbing? What makes you take on such a challenge? I'm just curious. Please explain. That mountaineer simply said this. Because the mountain is there.
Ah.
I've heard that saying before too. Yes. It was a well-known phrase even when I was your age. There were many parodies. Playing games because they are there, ordering chicken because it is there. Many bland jokes were going around back then. I guess Earth was already quite hot back then too. It was around the time when global warming started in earnest. The director's scissors cleanly snipped off some stray hairs. The cut hair scattered in the wind. By telling me this story now, Are you trying to ask me why I'm aiming for the 100th floor? No, Gongja. I'm not particularly interested in asking that. As usual, the director spoke quietly with a somewhat furrowed face. And then, he added. Because you have the luxury to. That was somewhat unexpected. Me? You do have a fine home, don't you? Indeed, as the director said, this place was my home. Not the sanctuary, the garden of withered flowers, but the mansion where I originally lived. 20th floor. In the sense that it was connected by stairs, it was one floor below the garden of withered flowers. In the sense that it was connected to the tower, it was 60 floors below that. You've also acquired such a beautiful garden. There was a reason for choosing to have my hair cut at home rather than at the sanctuary. I was determined not to leave anything unnecessary for the flowers in the garden, not even a speck of dirt or a drop of water. Therefore, the hair that was cut from my head mingled with dandelion seeds in my home's yard, not in the garden. Having a home means you have a castle to protect yourself and your family. Having a flower garden means you have the leisure to fully consider and care for not just your own family but others as well. There must be a significant reason for someone like you to take on a challenge. You have the leisure to do so. Leisure, is it? Only those who have leisure can afford to take on challenges. The sound of the snipping scissors continued as the director spoke. A person wandering in the desert, drinking water from an oasis, can't really call that a challenge. No one would call it a challenge when a starving child hastily picks up bread thrown away on the roadside. It's just struggling against what comes your way. Indeed. Only those who can afford to lose have the capacity to prepare for something new. Only those who have the leisure to accept themselves as they are can accept others as they are. Only those who have everything in place can afford to take on a challenge. When someone who is able can do more, I don't really question it. Snip. Rather, I do have questions for those who can't take on challenges. Snip. Why did that person end up wandering in the desert? Why did that child end up starving? Why? Why indeed? That's why I don't wonder why Marcus Callenberry or Sean McAllister decided to give up everything and enter here. By the same logic, I don't wonder why the sky that gathers screams aims for the 100th floor either. It's just that With a heavy sigh, the director continued. I'm really curious why 20-year-old Kim Gongja entered the tower. I twisted my head this way and that, checking the shape of my hair. Because the tower is here, what about that? That mountaineer eventually failed to summit. Snip. A chill from the cold blade grazing my scalp made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. He briefly stepped outside his tent in a blizzard and then disappeared completely. His body wasn't even found, so his companions and family had to hold a funeral with an empty coffin. It was almost 100 years later when his body was discovered. I've never heard that before. It's always the person's words that spread wider and last longer than the person themselves. Snip. Gongja. The director spoke in a quiet voice. Why did you enter the tower? The director in the mirror looked straight at me. Was it really because the tower is here? 2. At the crossroads connecting my sanctuary and the 90th floor, the Wand of Ages greeted me. Welcome, Death King. You're dressed refreshingly. Yes. Your expression isn't so refreshing though. Did something happen? Given that this mage had a gloomy default expression since his defeat, it must be fairly noticeable for him to comment like this. I wiped my forehead as I spoke. No, well. I was just reminded of old times. You sound like an old man. It's not fitting for someone who have so many days ahead to live to talk like that. The Wand of Ages, with his staff in his mouth, said. Or should I say days left to die? Which do you think is correct? I'd prefer to hear that only happy days are left for me. That's nice. But I'm not the one who should be telling you that. That was true. Let's go. The Wand of Ages snorted and began leading the way. I followed him, calmly walking up the stairs that draped like an umbilical cord. Around my neck, as always, was a scarf from Fox, and on my wrist hung a serpent bracelet. And floating lightly behind me was the Sword Emperor. Only the usual place on my hip where the holy sword hung felt empty. Sword Emperor. What? The Sword Emperor responded immediately. I asked both aloud and in my heart. What comes next? The Wand of Ages did not turn to look at me. Neither did the Sword Emperor glance at me. Only their answers came simultaneously. The Tower Master was an artist. I am a fighter. Thud. You've seen the Tower Master's life, so you roughly know. She was a warlord, a politician, and a noble, but equally a gladiator, an actress, and an architect. You've seen me so far, right? You know I don't like to measure and weigh things. Sometimes my taste conflicts with that of the usual world, but eventually my taste becomes that of the world. At the same time, she was also the most outstanding musician in the kingdom. Those who tried to impose their tastes on me all ended up with broken heads. With each step up the stairs, the sky seemed closer. In some ways, you could say she was similar to you. Honestly, didn't you climb the tower in a similar way to me? The Tower Master was so free-spirited that no one could leash her. But that freedom had clear boundaries. The Ghost King was quite unexpected, but when defeating the Devil King of Fall Rain, I became certain. Wow. Have I ever seen such a reckless, crazy bastard like this? But, yes. If you don't like the quest you're given, you should beat up the one giving the quest. If there's a rule you don't like, you beat up the one making the rules until they're to your liking. The changing scenery with each step had an unreal feel to it. It felt like walking on a treadmill. I was moving in place while the surroundings seemed to step down with each move. The Tower Master especially liked fugues. This tower is the same, Gongja. She liked to compose music where the beginning and end connected, and she enjoyed having lines with different starting points converge to the same end. There are nasty things that play with memories, but even they would have had their heads broken if they pulled that nonsense while I was climbing the tower. Just like you did. You have to admit it. Then. Both spoke in unison, as if breathing together. So. What lies beyond here is an extension of what has been. There's nothing new beyond here. The world began to distort. Like mixing dozens of colors of rubber clay together and smushing them, the ground far below melted away first. The sky followed. It melted. The sky, disintegrating into droplets, eventually turned into countless grains of sand and flowed down like a waterfall. You probably could make it to the 100th floor. I hear Gray was the last to reach the 94th floor? No. It wasn't a waterfall. Anyone who has climbed from the 1st to the 90th floor should be able to make it. For her, starting from the 50th floor, it would have been difficult to climb higher. It was a giant hourglass. It was similar to the sanctuary of Musha I had once seen. An vast wide desert. The distorted air under the blazing sun seemed like it was caused by incredibly thick glass. In the center, like blood oozing slowly from a snake's heart, a sand waterfall was flowing. In the middle of the hourglass, I stood. A familiar voice greeted me. Welcome, Death King. Or should I say, Screaming Sky, as you should be called now. I looked at the figure with a bewildered expression. Lady of the Mirage? Yes. It's me. Long time no see. The lady who walks the mirage greeted me with bouncy jumps as usual, full of energy. It doesn't seem like it's been that long.
Did
you come to guide me? Yes. Exactly. The lively lady twirled around on the spot, her hair fluttering, and then waved at the Wand of Ages. You've had a hard time till now. I'll take over from here. All right. This old man whose string has snapped will now take his leave. Yep. If you find the time, go help Mia out. That kid doesn't like others helping with her work, you know. That's exactly why you should help. You little. The Wand of Ages retreated with a disgusted yet strangely amused smile, as if he had found the perfect stress relief. The advisor has had a tough time. Originally, advisors are meant to have a hard time. Doesn't Screaming Sky's advisors also suffer? Maybe. But I think I've suffered more because of that kid? That's exactly it. Just like how Liu Bei used Zhuge Liang with the intention of getting the most out of him. Liu Bei, courtesy name Xuanda, was a Chinese warlord in the late Eastern Han dynasty who later became the founding emperor of Shu Han, one of the three kingdoms of China. And Zhuge Liang, courtesy name Kongming, was a Chinese politician, military strategist, writer, engineer, and inventor. He served as the imperial chancellor, or prime minister, and regent of the state of Shu Han during the Three Kingdoms period. After making a statement that could split fans of the Shu kingdom into two, the lady who walks the mirage casually pulled something out. It was a small stone tablet. That is. Yes. The lady who walks the mirage grabbed the sides of the stone tablet with both hands and lifted it forcefully. Screaming Sky. I will now tell you what you need to do. In the center of the stone tablet, there were 9 holes. You need to collect 9 keys. The lady who walks the mirage declared.